What if the reason you're not waking up the way you used to has absolutely nothing to do with your age and everything to do with three things missing from your nighttime routine? I know that might sound surprising because we've all been told the same story. You're over 50. This is just what happens. But I want you to stop right there because that story is not the whole truth. And today, I'm going to show you exactly why. My name is Dr. James, and I specialize in neurology and men's vitality. Every single week, men walk into my office, successful men, active men, men who take care of themselves, and they all say the same thing. Doctor, I've noticed my mornings aren't what they used to be. Is there anything I can actually do about it? And every single time I tell them, yes, there is something you can do, and it starts tonight. So, stay with me because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what's happening inside your body, why it's happening, and 3 natural powders you can take before bed tonight to start supporting stronger circulation, healthier hormone activity, and better morning vascular responses. This is real evidence-informed information, and it could completely change how you feel when you wake up tomorrow. The real story behind morning vascular health. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine waking up and feeling the way you used to feel 10 years ago, that sense of physical readiness, that quiet confidence that tells you your body is working the way it should. That's not a fantasy, that's physiology. And when you understand the physiology, you can work with your body instead of wondering why it's working against you. Here's what most men don't know. The phenomenon we refer to clinically as nocturnal penile tumescence, what most people call morning erections, is not simply about desire or arousal. It is one of the most reliable biological indicators of overall cardiovascular and endocrine health in men. When a man experiences strong, consistent morning vascular engorgement, it tells us that his blood vessels are elastic and responsive, his nitric oxide pathways are functioning, his testosterone is being produced during sleep as it should be, and his autonomic nervous system is in proper balance. In other words, strong mornings are a signal. They are your body's way of saying everything is working. And when those mornings become less frequent or less consistent, it's not just a change you notice in the bedroom. It is a flag your body is waving, telling you that something in the system, circulation, hormones, or recovery needs attention. Now, here is where it gets important. After the age of 50, 3 major changes begin to happen simultaneously in the male body. Nitric oxide production declines, testosterone levels gradually decrease, and cortisol, the primary stress hormone, begins to interfere more aggressively with overnight hormonal restoration. These 3 changes compound each other, and together, they create the perfect environment for weakened morning vascular responses. But here's the thing, no one is telling you, these changes are not irreversible. They are not sealed in stone. The human body is remarkably adaptive, and when you give it the right nutritional tools, specifically the right natural compounds at the right time of day, it can begin to restore the very processes that support strong, reliable mornings. That's exactly what today's video is about. And if you're finding this helpful already, do me a favor right now. Tap that like button and hit subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel reach more men who need this information. Now let's get into it. I want you to keep watching because the 3rd powder I'm going to share is the one most men have never heard of, and in clinical settings, it may be the most impactful of the 3 when it comes to overnight hormone restoration. The science of what happens while you sleep. Before we talk about the powders, I want to spend just a few minutes helping you understand what your body is actually doing between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. because this is the foundation everything else is built on. During deep sleep, your pituitary gland sends signals to your testes to produce testosterone. This is not a metaphor, this is documented biochemistry. The majority of your daily testosterone is produced during slow-wave sleep. That testosterone then circulates through your body, reaching your vascular tissue, your muscle cells, your brain, and the tissues responsible for morning engorgement. At the same time, your body is producing nitric oxide, which relaxes and dilates blood vessels, allowing blood to flow freely to every tissue that depends on it. But here's what disrupts that process. Cortisol, the stress hormone your body produces when it's under pressure, is a direct antagonist to testosterone. When cortisol is elevated at night, which happens more and more after 50 due to age-related changes in the adrenal glands and HPA axis, it suppresses the testosterone production cycle. Less testosterone during sleep means weaker morning vascular response when you wake up. At the same time, when nitric oxide pathways are depleted because you're not getting enough dietary nitrates or because your endothelial cells have become less efficient, your blood vessels become stiffer. Less flexible blood vessels mean reduced blood flow, and reduced blood flow means that even when testosterone is present, the vascular mechanism that drives morning engorgement cannot perform to its full potential. So, what you have in millions of men over 50 is a two-part problem: hormonal disruption from nighttime cortisol and vascular restriction from reduced nitric oxide. The good news, and this is where it gets genuinely exciting, is that both of these problems respond to natural dietary intervention, particularly when that intervention happens in the evening right before the body enters its overnight restoration phase. That's the exact window we're going to use, and these 3 powders are exactly what we're going to use to do it. Powder 1, beetroot powder. The first powder is one you may have seen on the shelf at your health food store and walked right past. I want you to go back and pick it up. It's beetroot powder. Let me tell you about a patient of mine. I'll call him Robert. Robert came in at age 57, retired engineer, active guy, ate reasonably well, but he was concerned. His mornings had become inconsistent over the past 2 years. He didn't feel like there was anything wrong with him exactly. He just felt like something had faded, something he couldn't quite name. When I ran his labs, his testosterone was in a low normal range, but what really stood out was his endothelial function, the ability of his blood vessels to dilate and respond to demand. It was significantly reduced. His nitric oxide pathways were not performing. I recommended 3 things. Beetroot powder was the first one. 6 weeks later, Robert came back in. He was grinning before he even sat down. So let me explain what beetroot powder actually does inside the body, because this is genuinely fascinating science. Beetroot is one of the richest known dietary sources of inorganic nitrates. When you consume these nitrates, your salivary bacteria begin converting them into nitrite. From there, nitrite is further reduced into nitric oxide, the same molecule that your endothelial cells use to signal vascular relaxation and dilation. This is called the nitrate-nitrite-nitric oxide pathway, and it is one of the most well-studied areas in cardiovascular and vascular medicine today. What does nitric oxide do? It acts on the smooth muscle cells lining your blood vessels and tells them to relax. When they relax, the vessel widens. When the vessel widens, blood flows more freely. When blood flows more freely, oxygen and nutrients reach every tissue in the body more efficiently, including the penile tissue that depends on strong, unobstructed blood flow to achieve and maintain engorgement. Think of your blood vessels like a garden hose. If the hose is stiff and narrow, water trickles through. If the hose is flexible and wide open, water flows powerfully. Nitric oxide is what opens that hose, and beetroot powder gives your body the raw materials to produce it. Here is why taking it at night specifically matters. When you consume beetroot powder in the evening, the nitrate to nitric oxide conversion happens over the following several hours. This means your body has elevated nitric oxide availability precisely during the overnight window when it is rebuilding, repairing, and preparing for the next morning. Your vascular tissue gets primed during sleep, and you wake up with better circulation already in motion. Multiple published studies have examined the relationship between dietary nitrate intake and erectile vascular function. Research published in journals like Nitric Oxide and the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition has demonstrated meaningful improvements in vascular dilation and blood flow markers following regular beetroot and dietary nitrate supplementation. The mechanism is consistent, the evidence is strong, and the safety profile is well established. From a practical standpoint, beetroot powder is one of the easiest things you can add to your nightly routine. Stir 1 teaspoon into a glass of cold water, or mix it into a warm herbal tea, or blend it with a little unsweetened almond milk and a squeeze of lemon. The taste is earthy. Some men love it, some take a few days to adjust. If you find it too strong at first, add a small amount of raw honey or a squeeze of citrus. Within a week, most men barely notice it. The key, as with all three of these powders, is consistency. 1 teaspoon every evening before bed, not occasionally every evening, because the body responds to sustained nutritional input, not random spikes. Robert, by the way, told me he'd been mixing his beetroot powder into warm water with a slice of lemon every night before bed. Dr. James, it's become my favorite part of the evening routine, he said. That's the kind of simplicity we're aiming for here. Now, I want to share the second powder, and this one has a fascinating history that goes back thousands of years. It was used by ancient cultures at high altitudes for energy, vitality, and reproductive health, and modern research is finally confirming what those cultures knew all along. Powder 2, maca root powder. The second powder is maca root, and if you haven't heard of it yet, you're about to become very glad you're watching this video. Maca, botanically known as Lepidium mayeni, is a root plant native to the Peruvian Andes Mountains, where it grows at elevations above 13,000 feet. The indigenous peoples of that region have used maca for more than 2,000 years, not as a medicine, exactly, but as a food staple and vitality enhancer. Traditionally, Andean men used it to support energy, endurance, fertility, and what they described as vital force. Soldiers were reportedly given maca before battle to increase their strength and stamina. For a long time, Western medicine dismissed this as folklore. But starting in the early 2000s, researchers began looking more closely at maca's biochemical profile, and what they found was remarkable. Maca is rich in bioactive compounds called glucosinolates and macamides. These compounds interact with the body's endocrine system in a way that is described clinically as adaptogenic, meaning they don't force the body in one direction or another, but rather help it find balance based on its current state. For men over 50, this is extraordinarily relevant. Here's what the research shows. Maca does not directly raise testosterone levels in the way that synthetic hormone therapies do. What it does instead is something more nuanced and arguably more sustainable. It helps regulate the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, the hormonal feedback loop that determines how much testosterone your body produces and how effectively it uses what it produces. It also appears to favorably shift the ratio of free testosterone to estrogen, which in men tends to become imbalanced with age as more testosterone gets converted into estrogen through a process called aromatization. When this balance is restored, when free testosterone is available and not being excessively converted, men report a meaningful return of something they'd almost forgotten: drive, morning readiness, physical confidence, the desire to engage intimately, and the capability to do so. But maca's benefits extend beyond hormonal balance. In a landmark study published in the journal Andrologia, men who took maca root for 12 weeks reported significant improvements in what researchers called sexual desire, even when their measured testosterone levels showed no statistically significant change. This led researchers to conclude that maca acts on central nervous system pathways related to arousal and motivation, independent of testosterone. In other words, it helps the brain and the body both want to perform and both be capable of performing. Now, let me tell you about another patient. I'll call him Marcus. Marcus was 62, recently remarried, and deeply embarrassed to be sitting across from me in my office. He said, "Dr. James, I love my wife. I want to be present for her, but I feel like I've lost something I can't get back." His testosterone was low normal. His cardiovascular health was actually quite good, but his cortisol, his stress hormone, was elevated every time we tested it, particularly in the evenings. He was a warrior by nature, running his own business, always on. I started Marcus on a simple nighttime protocol. Maca root powder before bed was part of it. The reason I specifically chose maca for Marcus was its documented effect on cortisol and stress response. Maca has been shown in animal studies and preliminary human trials to lower cortisol levels during periods of chronic stress, making it particularly useful for men whose evening stress hormones are interfering with overnight testosterone production. Maca also supports deeper, more restorative sleep, not through sedation, but through stress reduction. And as I mentioned earlier, deep sleep is when testosterone is produced. So when maca reduces cortisol and helps you sleep more deeply, you're directly creating the physiological conditions for stronger hormonal restoration. At 8 weeks, Marcus came back in. He sat down, leaned back, and for the first time looked relaxed. "I don't know what you gave me," he said, "but I feel like myself again." From a practical standpoint, maca root powder has a mildly nutty, slightly malty flavor that most men find pleasant. Mix 1 teaspoon into warm milk. Dairy or any plant-based alternative works fine. Or blend it into a chamomile tea with a spoonful of raw honey, or add it to a small nighttime smoothie. It pairs beautifully with cinnamon, which is not just a flavor enhancement. Cinnamon itself has some evidence behind it for blood sugar regulation and circulatory support. Take 1 teaspoon every night before bed. Give it 4 to 6 weeks of consistent use before evaluating. The research consistently shows that maca's benefits are cumulative. They build before I get to the third and final powder, which I believe is the most powerful of all 3 for men dealing with stress-related testosterone suppression. I want to explain how these 3 powders work as a system, because taking them together creates something much more powerful than any one of them alone. Powder 3, ashwagandha powder. The third powder is ashwagandha, and this one has some of the most compelling human clinical trial data of any natural compound in the field of men's hormonal health. Ashwagandha, botanically known as Withania somnifera, is an adaptogenic root herb that has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for over 3,000 years. Its name in Sanskrit roughly translates to smell of horse, referring both to its distinctive aroma and to the traditional belief that it imparted the strength and vitality of a horse. Modern research has vindicated that ancient reputation in a very specific and measurable way. Let me give you the clinical picture first, and then I'll tell you why it matters so deeply for men over 50. A randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition examined ashwagandha supplementation in men over 8 weeks. The men who took ashwagandha showed statistically significant increases in serum testosterone. We're talking an average increase of around 15 to 17% compared to the placebo group. They also showed reduced cortisol levels, improved muscle recovery, and better subjective reports of energy, mood, and vitality. Another study published in the American Journal of Men's Health found that ashwagandha supplementation over 16 weeks led to significant improvements in testosterone levels, sperm quality, and overall measures of male reproductive hormonal health. The researchers noted that the mechanism appeared to be dual, direct stimulation of testosterone biosynthesis and indirect support through cortisol suppression. Here is why that dual mechanism is so important. For men over 50, cortisol is the hidden saboteur. You may not feel acutely stressed, you may be sleeping a reasonable amount, but the physiological reality is that after 50, the HPA axis, the hormonal stress response system, becomes more reactive. More cortisol is released in response to everyday demands. And that cortisol, circulating in your system overnight, directly suppresses the luteinizing hormone signals that drive testosterone production in your testes. Ashwagandha attacks this problem at the root. It has been shown to reduce cortisol levels by up to 27% in clinical settings. That reduction in cortisol allows your brain to send cleaner, stronger signals to your testes overnight. Your testes produce more testosterone. That testosterone circulates to the vascular tissue that needs it, and your morning vascular response is stronger as a result. But ashwagandha does something else that is incredibly relevant to morning engorgement specifically. It supports the integrity and health of the endothelial cells, the cells lining your blood vessels. Healthy endothelial cells produce more nitric oxide. More nitric oxide means better vascular dilation, and better vascular dilation means stronger blood flow to the tissues that depend on it. So you can see how ashwagandha actually bridges both parts of the morning response problem. It reduces the cortisol that suppresses testosterone, and it supports the vascular cells that respond to testosterone. One compound, 2 critical mechanisms. Ashwagandha also has a well-documented effect on sleep quality. A study published in PLOS1 found that participants who took ashwagandha root extract reported significantly better sleep quality, faster sleep onset, and improved morning alertness compared to placebo. This matters enormously because quality sleep, specifically deep slow-wave sleep, is when testosterone production peaks. Every night you sleep better, you're giving your hormonal system a more powerful restoration window. Let me introduce you to one more patient. I'll call him Daniel. Daniel was 55, a former athlete, someone who prided himself on physical health. But over the previous 3 years, something had shifted. He'd become increasingly irritable. His sleep was broken, waking up at 3 a.m., mind racing. His mornings had changed, and his relationship with his wife was beginning to feel the strain. When I examined Daniel's labs, his cortisol pattern was the story. It was elevated at night when it should be at its lowest, and his free testosterone was suppressed as a direct consequence. His endothelial function, like Robert's, was compromised. He was a textbook case of what I call cortisol dominance at night, a pattern I see increasingly in high-achieving men over 50. I placed Daniel on a 3-powder nighttime protocol, the same 3 we're discussing today: beetroot for vascular priming, maca for hormonal balance and stress reduction, ashwagandha as the cornerstone for cortisol regulation and testosterone restoration. At 10 weeks, Daniel's follow-up labs showed a meaningful reduction in nighttime cortisol. His free testosterone had increased into a healthier range, and most meaningfully to him, he was sleeping through the night. His mornings had returned. He sent me a message that simply said, "I feel like the old version of myself is back." That is what this information is for. From a practical standpoint, ashwagandha powder has an earthy, slightly bitter taste. The most enjoyable way to take it is stirred into warm whole milk or a plant-based alternative. This is actually a traditional Ayurvedic preparation called ashwagandha milk or moon milk, and it's been made this way for centuries. Add a half teaspoon of raw honey and a pinch of cinnamon, and you have a genuinely pleasant nighttime drink that most men come to look forward to. 1 teaspoon before bed every night, consistently. So let me leave you with this. You are not too old. Your body has not given up on you. The changes you've noticed in your mornings are real. They are physiologically explainable, and they are addressable. What you're experiencing is a signal, not a sentence. And now you understand what that signal is telling you. Beetroot powder, taken every evening, gives your blood vessels the nitric oxide they need to stay flexible, open, and responsive. Maca root powder, taken every evening, supports hormonal balance, reduces the cortisol that suppresses testosterone, and works with your central nervous system to restore vitality and readiness. Ashwagandha powder, taken every evening, regulates the stress hormone environment that governs overnight testosterone production, supports your endothelial cells, and deepens the quality of sleep that makes restoration possible. Start tonight. Buy the powders, prepare your first nighttime drink, and commit to 4 weeks of consistency. Your body will not transform in 3 days, but at 4 weeks and again at 8 weeks, you will very likely feel a difference in your mornings, in your energy, in your confidence, and in the quiet pride that comes from knowing your body is working the way it's designed to. I'm Dr. James, and this is Urology Education and Vitality, a channel built specifically for men who want real, science-informed answers to the questions they're often too embarrassed to ask anyone else. There is no embarrassment here, only information, support, and the deep belief that your best physical years do not have to be behind you. If this video helped you, please take 5 seconds right now and hit that like button. It tells YouTube to share this with more men who need to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't already. We put out new content on men's urological health, hormonal vitality, and natural approaches to aging every week. And drop a comment below. I read every single one. Tell me where you're watching from, ask a question, or share what you're most looking forward to trying. Your comment might be the one that helps another man feel less alone. And share this video with one man in your life, a friend, a brother, a father, who needs to hear that his mornings don't have to be what they are right now. Because knowledge is only powerful when it reaches the people who need it. Your best mornings are not a memory, they are a goal, and tonight you have everything you need to start working toward them. Disclaimer: this video is intended for educational and informational purposes only. The content presented here is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before beginning any new supplement or making changes to your health routine. Individual results may vary. The information in this video is based on publicly available research and is shared to promote general health awareness.